The International Recovery Platform is a global partnership working to support countries and communities to build back better in recovery from disasters. Established in 2005, the essential nature of its work has since been underscored by its recognition in the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. Building back better is the use of the recovery, rehabilitation, and reconstruction phases after a disaster to increase the resilience of affected communities and reduce disaster losses by integrating disaster risk reduction measures into the restoration of physical infrastructure and societal systems, the revitalization of livelihoods, economies, the environment, and other impacted sectors. While recent disaster recovery experiences demonstrate how far recovery practice has progressed, they also signal continued challenges in achieving the ambitions of building back stronger, faster, and more inclusively, and delivering greater resilience in a range of settings. As the Sendai Framework approaches its midpoint, IRP aims to assess progress and achievements, as well as enduring and emerging challenges, to advance efforts to build back better through 2030 and achieve a more resilient future.
Recovery from a large-scale disaster is a very valuable source of information, lessons learned, and good practices of Build Back Better. And this year marks the 10-year anniversary after Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. So the Japanese government has developed a large volume of reports on lessons learned from recovery from the Great East Japan earthquake. These efforts are very important for promoting Build Back Better.
The greatest results we have achieved in the recovery field is a widespread recognition of the concept of the Build Back Better itself. So now many disaster-prone countries have developed their DRR plans, and recovery is clearly positioned as an important opportunity to improve DRR capacities.
We can see becoming more evident since the adoption of the Sendai Framework is the engagement of the private sector in recovery programs at the national and local level. By promoting the public and private partnership, what we have seen is that elements of maturity have moved not only in the context of business continuity, but actually in creating incentive for the private sector and developing standards that are addressing disaster risk reduction overall.
One of the major achievements so far is that many countries are beginning to realize the value of long-term and cross-sectoral planning to development and recovery processes. The focus is still on replacing what was lost first, but more and more governments apply long-term inclusive planning and development of infrastructure to achieve a resilient built environment for resilient communities.
Pasar de un enfoque reactivo a un enfoque preventivo. Esto es una de las acciones que nuestros gobiernos han desarrollado y que han visto la importancia para seguir promoviendo planes de recuperación y reconstrucción eficaces y eficientes, y sobre todo que sitúen al centro urbano en el centro y a las comunidades en el centro de nuestra intervención, y que se diseñen y apliquen estrategias de reducción del riesgo de desastres a largo plazo, y sobre todo que hagan posible el análisis y la gestión prospectiva del riesgo.
You cannot approach a recovery and reconstruction of a city from a point of view of one sector only. Whatever you do on the health sector will have an impact on the economic sector. Whatever you do on the transport sector will have an impact as well on the livelihood sector. So I would say that was or is still one of the main challenges. I believe that the SDGs, as well as the Sendai Framework and the New Urban Agenda, for example, are more holistic in their perspectives.
One of the main challenges to greener recovery is the absence of good large-scale models of building back better. And that is where platforms like the International Recovery Platform can play a big role by projecting examples so that other countries which are facing disasters can learn from them and adopt in their own recovery plans.
how we can leverage better financing, whether it is looking internally in the financing sector within the affected governments, or looking at the opportunities through donor countries. The second thing we face, even with the best intent, is what one might refer to as a tyranny of the urgent. And quite frankly, sometimes the Build Back Better requirements are desirous of a much longer thought process in terms of looking at where we rebuild, how we rebuild, and that is not always in line with the demands and needs of those that are affected.
The element of inclusivity is the way to ensure that no one is left behind. Marginalized and the most vulnerable people suffer the greatest impact from disasters, but they're still under or they are not represented at all in recovery planning.
In many cases, we have done post-disaster needs assessments, but we have not been able to convert them into meaningful recovery programs because of a dearth of financing. Little attention is paid to what I call preparedness for recovery. Things as simple as carrying out a post-disaster needs assessment is complicated by the fact that there is no baseline data that is available. Particularly, you can have the best Building Back Better standards, but if those are not implemented and monitored, it can lead to poorer quality of infrastructure.
In the latter half of the Sendai Framework, because of the increasing frequency and the severity of meteorological hazards, and also increasing urban population globally and increasing vulnerability, the concept of Build Back Better is getting much more important.